So I've entered into what I have to say is a very surreal sort of phase of development with regards to the Studio J platform. And let me try to unpack this a bit for you. The first way in which it's become surreal is very sort of easy to explain, and I think it's easily relatable, even if you're not doing anything like I'm doing. And when I say so, that one is simply this that normally for any company, right, when you're starting a business or you're creating a product, you create the product and you start out small and you slowly build. And then as you build that company, then you need more sort of infrastructure. Maybe you need more people and you need new systems. And maybe at some point, if that company gets really, really big, then you start developing your own management software tools, et cetera, et cetera. This is in reverse, right? Because I'm basically building the enterprise platform as the product and from within the product before it's grown into anything, right? So in this weird, very surreal way, the more that this thing grows, the more I am in this sort of giant enterprise software and platform, alone as its creator and developer, um, with a very sort of small user base at the moment. That to me is a very kind of inverted, strange phenomenon, really, and in particular the fact that it's one person. That's the other side of it, I guess. That's become very surreal, which is that in the earlier phases of this project, in terms of what it could be, I certainly thought, oh, yeah, and then one day it could be this and one day it could be that. And I'd imagine that, once I got the platform to a certain sort of basic level, it would immediately have value. And I think I did reach that point fairly early on. I mean, I was very kind of cautious about when I launched it. And I thought that even when I launched it right on sort of day one, it had some value and some advantages over existing major platforms, right? Like WordPress, Wix, Shopify, etc. And in fact, at that point in time, I certainly was like, okay, we're nowhere close to Basecamp, but that's fine. We're still adding value, and so I launched it. And from those early days, I imagined, like I said, one day we could do something like this. One day we could have that. And when I imagined that process, I imagined, the platform having far more sales, the company having grown in staff, right? That the idea of those kinds of capabilities or the kinds of capabilities that it happens to have now, I imagine would require a much larger infrastructure. And yet it keeps getting more and more sophisticated and it continues to only require me. And again, that's a very sort of surreal phenomenon about the whole thing. And I think there's, in some ways, a third one, which is this. When it comes to development and coding and so on, for the most part in my career, first of all, I spent a lot, I've worn a lot of hats in an agency environment. So programming, coding is, in fact, one of the lesser jobs that I have historically done. And to the extent that I did programming and coding, it was mostly on my own, with my own projects and ventures. And I regarded myself as much more of a front end developer. In other words, it's not that I shied away from the back end stuff and all the hosting and configurations and things like that. I just didn't enjoy it, right? Like I liked the design and front end of things. And as far as those, like DNS records and cPanel things, I just wanted to, it's like, okay, fine, let me figure out what I have to do once and let's figure out a solution that lets me only have to deal with that once. And then I never want to touch it again, kind of a thing. And then here I am with the sort of Studio J project, and I'm doing a lot more of those sort of back end. Oh, wait a minute, I've got to go into Cloudflare and do that. And I've got to go into my cPanel and figure this little detail out and fix that. And I'm debugging and working with Claude AI mostly to, you know, uh, debug problems and change things. In many ways, I'm still doing the same thing that I always did, right? Which is, let's say, as a manager or a lead developer to some extent, you're mapping out a vision for a project. You're kind of giving instructions to a development team, which is essentially one AI model that is a whole bunch of. It's like having that's like having in one ways a giant team. It's like it's so big that every day a new guy shows up for every conversation that you have, and all of them kind of know and have the same capabilities. And it doesn't matter that you never spoke to that guy before. But anyway, so he's your sort of developer on the job, and you're telling him what to do, and then he's doing it. And you're sort of there as quality control and again to help it debug. And so I'm doing that stuff, and I have again that experience to say, okay, I think what we should do is go into the hit F12 and go into the uh, dashboard control developer tools, and grab some screen captures there for Claude, and that'll help Claude. So in some ways, it's like I know how to help Claude, but the funny thing that happens there is that, so I'll say, oh, this isn't working. Oh, here's what I think will help. Claude goes and figures it out. Well, I never really actually personally knew precisely what the problem was in the code of the API. A lot of the times he's talking about, there's an issue with this string. I'm like, okay, I didn't actually look at the code that closely to know what string you're talking about. But okay, if you tell me this is going to fix it, so go fix it. So let's say something like that happens, and you fix a little tool that you're working at. Great, you got a module. Now you know. Now again, from my perspective or from the human perspective, it's like, okay, I know what that module does. I know how it works. So here's the thing about that sort of development process, right? Studio J is a modular platform, so you can just keep on adding more and more and more, really, technically. There's no end to that. And so what happens is that as I'm developing these tools, whether it be to manage Studio J, the company itself, or as an additional tool that will help users, um, when sometimes obviously the more that you have, the more of those modules that exist, the more you can say, okay, it functionally in terms this new thing that I want to build has an element of this one, and this one. And now it can look at all of that architecture. And what happens there is it says, if you just say, here's what I want to do, it's like, yeah, maybe this could be complicated. I don't know. And then it looks at those other modules and it's realizing, it's like, well, you already solved this problem, that problem, and that problem. Well, I never solved it. I don't even know all of those problems that I solved. I just know that somewhere in the code are solutions to problems that make it easier to solve future problems. And that's what I mean is this thing just gets kind of smarter than me, bigger than me, um, at this enterprise level. And that's where in I guess why I'm doing this at this point in time is that a very huge step for me in terms of sort of the architecture of the whole company and the business flow of things, getting to a point where we could offer a hosted version of Studio J so that it was kind of you just kind of bought it, click through, and poof, there was your site on a domain, and then some tools that would help you mask that to your a real domain if you wanted to do it that way, or just keep the subdomain. That was the goal. And as I recently kind of posted about Rack Nerd, we did a lot of research around what would be the most appropriate fit for what our objectives were. And Rack Nerd came out on top, and we went for a package with them. and have been absolutely delighted since. Like we opened up maybe a grand total of four questions, tickets, and those were answered within minutes. And within 3 days, that whole system, which is to me kind of a complicated idea and a complicated development process, was done in 3 days. And as it currently stands, if you go on Studio J now, you can go and get a subdomain hosted feature. And then, I mean, I had it live, and then of course at that point it's like, okay, well, those people are going to need some specialized tools, and this is where I'm saying it's become funny because I built Studio J in large part to do what I was saying at the top of this, which was so that all of those sort of power tool type um, controls and all of those DNS and SSL certificates and all of that stuff, like SSL certificates. I've always hated SSL certificates. And now, if you go and get a Studio J hosted thing, there's actually a process in the purchase. That's the where it kind of like waits. It's like waiting for your SSL certificate, and that's the thing that is kind of hanging up for the longest time for that process. But it does happen automatically. And then, like I said, you just kind of click a button, and then now you're into your installment of Studio J on our hosting arrangement with Racknerd. Um, and today, in just one day, all of those kind of power tools now exist in both on the Studio J central side. Tools that I usually would like to avoid are now embedded into Studio J, and those hosted users have some basic easy click, create an email tool, right? Um, so it's just so strange to me to have arrived at a point where it's like an enterprise sophisticated level software. It's developed first and more and sort of getting more and more complete and rapidly more complete, well ahead of its user base. So I don't know if that makes sense, but to anyone else who maybe is sort of deep in their own builds and the that sort of cumulative growth of everything that you started, and then it grows by itself, and to the next thing you know, you're at a point which is far further than you expected to be, far faster than you expected to be, and all essentially on your own with the AI. I find all of that really remarkable.